Hey everybody, welcome back to Bible Basics. I'm George Willett. We are going through a study on apologetic evangelism. We had just finished a couple months ago now, apologetics, and now putting it into action. That's tonight's lesson. We've talked quite a bit about, a lot of this material came from a book, Transforming the Neighborhood, Apologetic Evangelism by Dr. Tim Wallingford. I want to make sure I give him credit, because now we're getting into stuff that is really coming from his excellent book that you all can pick up. So I want to just remind us that when we share the good news of Jesus, that's evangelism. We're trying to present Jesus as Lord and Savior to people. And we give answers to the questions that people have. That's called apologetics. That goes together. I mean, they're two sides of the same coin, that whenever we share Jesus, people will of course have questions. When we're answering questions, please remember this. We're answering a person, not just a question. And what I mean by that, and I've seen this happen all too often, and it's a risk I can run if I'm not intentional, that if someone is challenging Christianity or being skeptical or even having a sincere question, I can almost take it like an argument that I'm trying to win versus a person I'm trying to win to the kingdom. Have the right kind of heart. Have compassion. Have the intentionality, the decision to say, I want to help this person get closer to Jesus, not just verbally win an argument with them. If you want to win an argument, then don't even engage the non-Christian. You can argue enough with other believers about great theology stuff that we don't need to be beating up the unsaved. Now, I get it. It's hard because there have been some skeptics in my life who are very aggressive and very challenging, but my desire is even for them to come into a saving relationship. So if we really engage people who don't yet believe in Jesus Christ, you're quickly going to see, and Dr. Wallingford does a great job with this, of seeing that there are some general types of people that you'll consistently encounter. He also went through the book of Acts and found that there are these general archetypes, there are these personalities that we can see, and they have the same kind of questions, they have the same kind of concerns or issues. And if you're aware of those, it can help you be prepared. In fact, it's funny, I watch a couple of professional apologists do videos and presentations, and there's one guy in particular that on his computer he has like a presentation for he says he's done this hundreds and hundreds of times. There's very rarely new questions, so he tends to have something prepared for almost every question he's ever received. This is kind of what we're talking about. Now, the dangers when you are doing a general type, is people will be like, well, that doesn't fully explain me. It's not supposed to. I'm not saying that everyone neatly fits in perfectly to these. I'm saying, but in general, you'll figure out, hey, this is something I need to be able to address, or this seems to be this particular person's struggle. So this is not necessarily for you to go up to someone, tag them and say, here's your type. That's a quick way of kind of turning them off from what you want to say. This is for us if we want to engage in evangelism to be aware of. So each of these types of people, typically, they have a misunderstanding. You engage them in conversation and you realize that the God they're talking about, the Jesus they're talking about, the Bible that they're arguing against, is not the God I worship, is not the Jesus of history, is not the Bible I have in my hands. They have gotten information from somewhere that is typically not accurate. Maybe partially, but not completely. So it's our job, it's our responsibility to help them see that and to correct it, to share the biblical Jesus with them. That can be difficult, but that's important. So to understand the biblical Jesus, we all have to do our work to study the Bible, to know who Jesus is, so that we can share him, know the authentic and accurate, the true representation, so you can correct any counterfeits or any mistakes. That's the idea. So there are 10 general types that Dr. Wallingford talks about, and we're going to look at these over the next few weeks. And here's what they are. These include the religious. These are people who they misunderstand the nature of God, and they're often going to rely on ceremonial stuff, on external stuff, on religious practices. If I just do this, it means I'm good. I'll be saved because I check off all the boxes on a list. Now, this can include people who consider themselves Christians already, but it also includes people who are tied into another belief system, and they think that this system saves. And we've got to be able to have an understanding of that and present where the gospel plan of salvation is the one that makes sense in light of what we see, the evidence that we talked about before. Next is the hurting. My experience has been more and more that many people who even present as a different type also tend to have some hurting there. They have a misunderstanding of who God is, about people, about their self, and their own life because they're seeing it through the worldview of their pain. It could be a physical illness, it could be emotional issues, it could be relational problems. It could be hurt that was done to them by a church body. I mean, there's all sorts of hurt that happens. And because of that, they are very skeptical about Jesus and the church and why would a good God allow these bad things to happen? Why do I have to suffer? Or why did people who talk about God act in a way that's so different from the God they're trying to share? All of those issues. Next is the spiritualist. I mean, these are people, and this is honestly, when you look at surveys of the church right now and the state of the church in America, people that are leaving the church are not really becoming atheist. They're becoming what's called nuns. They declare themselves to be spiritual but not religious. They, by and large, reject any organized teachings about God, any holy book, any official church organization. Many of them reject the person of Jesus Christ, and they instead are focusing on supernatural things of the world, mystical, magic, other ways of interpreting reality that puts power and control in their hands almost. And I am thinking of Wiccan, but also there's these mystical forms of Judaism, there's mystical forms of other religions that they rely on spell casting or totems or these other things, numerology, psychics, all sorts of things would fit in here. And in general, the thing they'll hold in common is just a rejection of sin. So there's no need for salvation. You know, everyone's okay. They just live a little different. But the powers that are out there just want what's good for people. This is another interesting group of people to talk to. You'll run across the seeker. Someone who is sincerely, authentically in searching out who God is. They can look at creation and know there's something bigger than us. Romans chapter 1, they have that moral law in their heart. They know things are just either right or wrong. But they lack specific information about Jesus. They don't know the Bible. They don't understand the gospel plan of salvation, that sin entered into the world through our rebellion, that our sin separates us from God and we need to be saved. But they tend to be open. You can have engaging conversations with them. Number 5 is the fanatic. Fanatics are people who are extremists. They are overwhelmingly devoted to something or someone. And so they come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Again, these are general types. Within it, it can look very different. Oftentimes, they find authority in their own strength and a legalistic mindset of, well, here is what I'm doing and this makes me happy and I don't need this, I'm a good person, or because of what I'm attached to, it's just fine in my life. And what people get fanatical about is amazing, because it can be their relationships with family members. It could be their job, their money, sports, anything. So you got to watch out for them, because again, they often will want to come into faith and kind of put faith beneath what they're fanatical about. So how do they fit the Bible teachings into football or basketball or baseball? And we're going to have these sports ministries, and it's really not about Jesus, it's about the sport, and Jesus is kind of in there somehow, they think. Next is the good person, number 6. These are people who, okay, they say they believe in the Bible or some other sacred holy book, and they have this code of conduct. They have this belief that if I just act the right way, if I'm just good enough, and I live the right way, that I'm going to get into heaven. I'm going to be saved. Not truly understanding that the Bible is clear that no one is good, not one. That all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That all people will suffer and receive the wages of their sin, which is death. It's very difficult sometimes to reach a good person. In their mind, they think, God will, of course, let me in because I'm better than, and they get a list of people they're better than. Instead of saying, have I measured up to perfection the way God has presented it? God is perfect. God is holy. Am I like God so I can enter into his presence sinless? Or do I need someone to save me from my sin? 7 is the abuser. This can be controversial. And as we get into it, we'll talk more when we get to each one of these. But these are angry, bitter people. These are people who can be threatening, aggressive. They try to hurt and control other people. They gaslight people, try to lie and manipulate. And they will place themselves as the ultimate control in their lives, but also the lives of other people. How could we possibly want to reach out to these kind of people? Because they need to be saved too. Because we need to present the gospel good news of Jesus to everyone. We are to love even our enemies. Now, again, I will do more caution when we get into talking about this, but I'm not saying, let me be very clear, I am not saying specifically that someone who has suffered from an abuser needs to be the one that goes without reconciling, without fixing anything and try to do this. I mean, again, it's very different how we can do this, but I just want to be cautious and say that these are types of people we're going to meet and we need to be prepared for. Number 8 is the skeptic. This is your classical atheist that most people think about. They believe in human reason, that the height of all evolution is humankind, mankind, that we should be able to find reason and meaning and purpose in our own understanding. They believe in critical thinking. They believe that if science can't prove it, then it's not worth knowing, or it's not something you can know. And they believe that faith is just superstition, that people who believe or have faith are weak or not intelligent, and there's no facts or evidence to back up any claims for faith. Again, we probably all know or have experienced something like this at some point. Number 9 is the misinformed. Some of these you'll see overlap a little bit, but the focus here is people who are they get limited knowledge about God. They kind of know God. They maybe even know a little bit about Jesus, but they don't have an authentic, deep understanding of the Bible or God. And unfortunately, I'm going to say that there are many who claim to be Christians in America, and I've shown you the research, and you can go back and look at those videos, the state of the church in America, where many Christians can't even make 7 statements of pretty much historical Orthodox Christian belief. that there is a heaven and a hell, that there is an actual entity, the adversary, Satan, that God is the creator of all things, that is involved in his creation, that Jesus is God in the flesh. He's a person in the Trinity, that God is triune, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. There are people who claim to be Christians that aren't able to say all of those things. There are people who claim to be Christians that say Jesus is not the only way to salvation. They're seriously misinformed. Then there are people outside of the church who don't claim to be Christians, and they're not Christians because they do have a deep misunderstanding of who God is, who Jesus is, what the Bible teaches. So we just need to make sure we're giving them good information. And then the last one is the hedonist. A hedonist is a little bit different than like the skeptic. The skeptic is really committed to their position that, human knowledge is the height of all knowledge. Hedonists are people who just are looking out for themselves. They want to experience pleasure. They want the good life. They don't want to be challenged. They just want to get along. They want to live their best life now. And that their life is lived in a way that maximizes their happiness. If it doesn't bring joy into their life, why do it? They go through life with little or no thought of other people. They don't consider God. They don't consider what will happen when they leave this earth. Is there an afterlife or not? What's going to happen to them? They're just having a good time. So those are the general types, 10 types that we'll talk about in the next few weeks. And I hope you stick with it. And again, we hope that it's helpful in the end. So I would just ask, you guys can like and comment on the videos. You can share. Just let us know if you're receiving the content and if it's helping at all. It'd be helpful for us to hear back from you. So God bless you, and we'll see you next week.